For this video, I want to talk about a basic galaxy processing workflow. With galaxy season upon us here, I figured this would be a good time to do it. It's geared towards beginners. If you have no experience processing galaxies, then this video is for you. So the photo we're going to use here, I took it maybe 3 years ago, back in 2020. It's M51. It's about 5 hours of integration from a bortle 8-9 backyard right outside of Washington, D.C. It's not great data. My reducer was not, I didn't have the backspacing correct for my reducer, which created some CA issues and elongated stars, but nonetheless, we're going to give it a try. So the first thing I'm going to do is get out my screen transfer function. I'm going to deselect this link RGB channels for now, and then do the auto stretch. And this is what we're looking at. You can see I have plenty of gradients. But the first thing I want to do is I want to crop it. I want to crop the edges. You can do that by going to Geometry, Dynamic Crop. And what I do is I just cover the whole thing and then inch each side in just a little bit. And then I'll zoom in and take a look. Generally, I like to maximize my field of view if possible, so I just want to crop out the stacking artifacts like this up here from dithering and whatever else. And then you can crop later once you're done with your process if you want to. For now, for our purposes, this looks pretty good. There we go. The next thing I'm going to do, we've got to get rid of this background. We can't have, it's going to be impossible to process this with such a crazy gradient here. So let's open up Dynamic Background Extraction. All right, and then what we're going to do here is we're going to set some parameters. Correction is going to be subtraction. And for our sample generation, I like them to be a little bigger. I'm going to say 20. And then let's go ahead and set some samples. And the key here is to just not put them on any stars or any nebulosity. You just want them to be in the background. So I usually start by putting a couple in the corner. You can see when I did these up here, they turned red. So that means we need to up our tolerance. So if I go to tolerance here, I'm going to just crank it to 10. And actually, smoothing factor, 2. And I can just keep on clicking. And you can see these turned green again when we up that tolerance. So that's what we wanted to see. And I'm just going to keep on going around now in a circle, work towards the galaxy a bit, finding as many blank spaces as possible. Now this is much easier on an image at a longer focal length like this, because there's not as many stars in the field, so it's easy to avoid hitting stars. Hopefully your galaxies will be the same as well. I'm just going to come all the way in here. I'm going to avoid this nebulosity here. Don't want to hit that. And that's probably pretty good for now. All right. Actually, let's get a couple right around the edge here. So subtraction, let's go ahead and just see what this does. I'm gonna auto stretch it. Okay, did a pretty good job. You can look at the discarded background that it extracted here. I'm going to close that out. We don't need that for anything. I'm going to minimize this one. And I'm going to close that. Diamond DBE. So let's look here. The next thing we need to do is we need to give this image coordinates. Now, if your photo is newer and you did it in weighted batch pre-processing, it usually plate solves for you and assigns the coordinates to the image. But in this case, since this was in 2020, I don't think that was a feature just yet. So I'm going to go to Image Analysis, Image Solver. I'm going to check my pixel size. That's the pixel size of the ASI533. My focal distance, which is actually, that is correct for this image, but it for my Edge 8, it's actually 1474. So I had my backspacing incorrect on this for sure. and I'll zoom in on the stars so you can see that a little more in a minute. But we're going to leave it there. I'm going to go to search here, M51. And it's going to put the coordinates up here. And then I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to, oh, I forgot to do the date. It's not vitally important, but I think it was in 2020, April sometime. So I'm just going to put that in there and hit OK. And now it will give my image coordinates. And why is this important? It's for the next step here, which is spectrophotometric color calibration. It needs coordinates to do its job. So now that it has coordinates, I'm just going to apply the default settings to it. All right, did its job. Let me drag this over here. It shows you the analysis, the white balance functions. And I'm going to go ahead and click this linked button here, linked RGB, link RGB channels, and then do a stretch. You can see it, you know, when you unlink it, you get different colors. I generally go with the linked. Looks pretty good. And so now that we have that out of the way, the cropping and the color calibration and the dynamic background extraction, we can go ahead and get to work here. So the first thing you want to do is your deconvolution. And in this case, I'm going to use BlurXterminator. I'm going to reset it here. Now, if you don't have this, you can just use whatever your method is for deconvolution. But I find that this is the easiest and the best. And I know it's an add-on in Pixinsight, but I highly recommend it. It really is a time saver, and it really works quite well. So to get it to work the way that we want it to, or the best method, is to use a manual PSF. And to do that, you can go to Script, Render, PSF Image, select Evaluate, and it will render an image, a PSF image, and give you some numbers here, and I'll show you what to look for. Okay, so right now we have these two numbers here are what we're looking at, 4.75 and 4.35. We want to just kind of go in between that. So I'm just going to go ahead and say right around 4.5. That's going to be our PSF number we're going to use for this. So I'm going to deselect automatic PSF, go up here to 4.5, and then I'm going to create, you can create a preview here in your image by selecting this little rectangle up here, and then selecting what you want to preview. Now I'm going to click on the preview, and we're going to apply this to the preview first. Now, sharpen non-stellar, I think this is always a bit too high by default, so I'm going to put it down to about 50-ish. And then the sharpen stars, if my image doesn't have super bloated stars, which this one doesn't have super bloated stars, I'm going to go ahead and drop that down to about 18 or so. And let's just apply it to the preview and see what happens here. All right, that's finished. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see the details. Now, if I hit Control-Shift-Z, it's going to undo the process in the preview. So this is before BlurXterminator. This is after. Before, after. And you can see it does a good job with the stars. So I'm pretty happy with this. You can experiment here. You can, you know, bump up the sharpen non-stellar and see what that does. All right. So again, a pretty good result. But I'm going to go back to about 50 here. I think that's going to be the best settings for this particular image. And now we have to select the full image and apply it to the full image. Now I'm using a GPU acceleration. I've set it up so that this process is much faster. It can usually finish an image with BlurXterminator. It can finish in about 30 seconds or so, which is pretty good. Before I set up that GPU acceleration, it was really slow. See, in 19 seconds to do this image. For the ASI2600, which is a larger field of view, it does take a little bit longer, but that GPU really helps. So I highly recommend that. Okay, so now that we have this finished, the next step, let's go in here and let's actually undo and redo so you can see it. Before, after. So that's pretty good deconvolution in my opinion. Next thing is going to be noise reduction. So I'm going to use NoiseXterminator, and Pixinsight offers quite a few noise reduction options. I just prefer NoiseXterminator because it is easy. But you could use TGV to noise. There's plenty of options. But to me, this is the easiest one to use. It's simple. It's got 2 sliders, and for this one, I generally take this down to about 75 for most of my images. This is a pretty noisy image. Obviously, you know, like I said, 5 hours only from bortle 8, 9 skies. It's just going to be a generally noisy image. Then I try to bump the detail up a little bit, and I'll explain a little bit how to look out for certain things here. Hold on, let's apply this and see what it does. And here we're just applying to the preview again, so that we can quickly toggle on and off and see what difference it made. Okay, I'm going to zoom in here. You can see it really reduced the noise nicely. So there it is before. Again, Control-Shift-Z. After. And this looks pretty good. Some of the things you want to look out for are halos around the stars. So if I bring that detail up all the way, you'll see the stars will start looking a little odd. You know, it creates a dark halo around here. It's not bad, but also you get just some artifacting, not great looking detail here. You know, it's bringing that out way too much. So generally for me, around 30 works pretty well. Let's take a look at that again. Yeah, to me that's just about right. And you can see there's still a little noise in the background here. I don't like to take all of the noise out if I can help it. I don't need it to be super smooth. I don't want it to look artificial. I want it to still be natural. And to me, to my eyes, this just looks a little more natural than taking it all out. And of course, you can always run another iteration of this after it's stretched towards the end if you want to remove some more noise. So let's just apply this to the full image. Again, I'm clicking on the full image here. I'm going to drag the triangle over and let it run. All right. This is our deconvolved and noise-reduced image. It looks pretty good to me. Now it's time to stretch. So let's go ahead and get out histogram transformation. And the way I use a pretty simple method to stretch here. I can use my mouse wheel here over on the screen transfer function to spread these apart a little bit, and these little sliders here. And since they're linked, they'll all move together. So if I think it's too bright, I'm going to drag this one down just a little bit. And I think the darks are pretty good. I'll leave that right there. And of course, we can always adjust this more after stretching via curves, which we'll get to. But once I have it set to where I want it, drag the triangle over here and just drop it onto the histogram transformation, and then drag that up here. And now we have to reset screen transfer function to get rid of the white. There you have it. Now you have a stretched image. So I'm going to close out histogram transformation. The next step is to apply some curves to this. The way we're going to do that is we're going to mask the galaxy. I'm going to use range selection for this. And when I say mask the galaxy, we're actually going to mask the background and the stars and make it so that we're only editing the galaxy. Our processes only affect the galaxy. So let's go ahead and create a preview here, or let's just preview the range selection. It's going to start out bright white like this, and if you reduce the lower limit here, or increase the lower limit, you can get something good. Now you'll see there's a lot of stars in here. We want to smooth this out. You can go pretty heavy on this. Still got some in the background, so I might need to reduce my, or increase my lower limit a little bit more. I'll try to go right there. All right. This looks pretty good. This should do. Now you see when you apply it, it shows you what is protected and what's not. In this case, the galaxy is not protected, but everything else pretty much is. Some of these brighter stars might be affected a little bit, but that's okay. So let's go here to the preview window now. Sometimes you might see that after you stretch it, you have to reset the screen transfer function like that. And if I want to hide the mask, the red that's showing us, you can do that up here. Hide and unhide so you can see what you're working on, what you're not. I'm going to leave it off for now. Let's go open our curves. Okay, so do a preview down here. This is the preview button, so you can see what it's going to do. I'm going to start with quite a bit of saturation here. And at this point, you can push some colors that you might want in there. So if you want it to be a little more on the blue side, and you'll see many interpretations of this galaxy, especially M51. You'll see everything from reddish to bright blue. You know, it's just, this is where you have some artistic freedom. So you can choose what you'd like to do. For this one, I'm pretty happy with that color. It's subtle, but it seems pretty natural. So if I just keep, let me go ahead and apply just the saturation to the whole image again. Here, got to click that, drag the triangle to it. You can see that. So it might need another iteration though. Let's look. We don't want to go too far. This looks pretty good to me. If I remove a little bit of red from it, it might make it look a little less purple, a little more on the blue side. You can see there's when you add red. So again, you know, at your own discretion. I think this is pretty good here. All right. Let me apply that to the whole image. Now if I zoom in here, I want to take a look and just see if I created any color noise. There's a little bit of color noise here. Yeah, so it might be worthwhile to get out. Let me go back to the preview here. Let's get out ACDNR. And this is a cool process. It's a noise reduction process, but it's separated between lightness and chrominance. I'm just going to turn off lightness. We've already denoised the lightness, but let's go here to the chrominance now. And let's see, rather than do the preview, I'm just going to zoom in here, turn this up a little bit, maybe to 3. Let's see if it gets rid of this color noise here. You can see it did a pretty good job. Control-Shift-Z, put it back in, out. Now let's zoom out and see if it affected our, it did affect our galaxy a little bit. You can see it took some of the reds out. Yeah. So that's where you have to kind of decide, you know, do you want, if you want to get rid of some of this color noise, it's pretty minimal at the expense of some of this other stuff. You could try and mask this in one way or another, but I think it's not too terrible, so I'm just going to leave it as is. I'm not going to apply any chromatic noise reduction there. All right. The next thing we want to do is some local histogram transformation. So let's open that process up. It's under Intensity Transformations. Go to my preview again. And when you, by the way, I still have this masked, so you can see. Just masking the actual galaxy here. So that's the only thing that we're working on. When you do the preview for this, it's going to be obnoxious. It's set all the way up. The default setting is all the way up here. The amount is up to 100%. So, but that's good when you're trying to examine which details you want to bring out, because if you bring this slider up, you'll notice the details become much bigger. If I slide it down, the details are smaller. So you can slide it until you see the details popping out that you want, and then you adjust the amount. So I usually come way down here. Then you can toggle on and off here. Before, after. Pretty satisfied with that. So let's go ahead and apply that to the whole image. Okay, so it's really coming together here. We're almost done for the basics. The next thing you might want to look at here is sharpening. So let's take a look here. One of the techniques that I use for sharpening is I use a mask. So I'm going to remove the mask that's currently on here. I'm going to go ahead and open up my range tool again. Here it is. It's already out. I'm going to reset it. And instead of doing the smoothness this time, I'm going to do fuzziness. And what I want to focus on is just the core. Basically, I want the details to be sharp right around here. So I'm going to reduce or increase my lower limit. And you'll notice that some of the stars are in here. So, and that's generally okay. You'll have to keep an eye when you use this. We're going to use Unsharp mask here in a second. But when you apply that, you just have to look out for halos and any other artifacting. But this is a good region to sharpen here. So I'm going to go ahead and create this mask. Let's minimize the other one for now. Oops. Okay, apply it. And let's just turn that preview on so you can see what's being masked and what is not. If I go here to Unsharp mask, and I can preview this. Let me toggle off and on. So I don't know if you can see that via YouTube here, but it's pretty substantial. It makes a big difference. So let me go ahead and apply it to this preview so we can zoom in a little bit. And I'll Control-Shift-Z some of this. So here it is, applied, unapplied. So it did a good job. Now, there's always a trade-off between noise and sharpness. You can see it does bring out some noise. But I have to say, to me, it's worth the trade-off. You get, a little bit sharper of an image at the expense of just a little bit of noise. And you can see the stars, as I was talking about before. As long as they're not haloing, it does sharpen some of these stars. Let's look at this one. That's not too bad. So if I was having an issue with stars haloing, this does have a de-ringing setting. But even more effective than that is, with the technology we have today, we can remove the stars from the image, and then we could do the sharpening of the galaxy and then add the stars back in if we needed to. But since this is just a basic video, I didn't want to go into all of that. So I like the sharpening this applies. Now, if I wanted to adjust the level of it, you could do this with a slider here. But actually, I think it's perfect the way it is. So I'm going to apply it to the entire image. And then we'll look at the stars again here. Okay, that's applied. Let's just make sure these stars didn't get too messed up. No. Okay, let's look at the galaxy. All right. Now that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Okay. So now that we've sharpened, the last thing you can do really is some more curves. If you want to do more curves, you can do it masked if you want. I'm going to remove this mask. If you wanted to, if you looked at your galaxy color, you can still edit the color. I'm pretty happy with how it looks here. You can also do, selective color saturation. Let me put the mask back on. If we wanted to go here to color saturation, and you just wanted to bring some more of the reds out, you can do that in this. I'm going to jump it up to 3 here, the range. You can put a bunch of points on here and selectively saturate some of the colors. So if I wanted more of these reds to come out, actually, let me do this to the preview. So I don't know if you can see a difference there or not. There's the blues. So I could highlight those a little bit. There's the magentas. So, you know, you could spend a lot of time refining your saturations. Let's see what it looked like before and after. That looks good to me. I'll go ahead and apply that. Why not? Gives it a little more color. Okay. So let's see here. Then maybe what you want to do now is let's remove the mask. Do one more run at curves on the whole image. Let's say I wanted to darken my background a little bit. I'm going to open curves, turn on the preview, and select RGB/K. Let me close this. I usually put 3 points on my line when I'm doing my final curves transformation here. One here for the lows, one for the mids, and one for the highs. So I want to darken the background. I just pull this back a little bit. And if I wanted to bring up the mids, you know, that brightens the galaxy a little bit, generally speaking. But you don't want to go too bright because then you're reducing the contrast and the saturation. So I'm actually pretty happy with where it is. Might bump it just a little. And then the highs, you know, I don't think you need to do any highs here. You can see that just blows out the high areas, so we don't want that. If anything, you could reduce them a little if you wanted to see a little more detail in there. But let's see. Let's turn our preview on and off here. Sometimes it glitches like that. Okay, let's try again. So you can see that's off, that's on. So we darken the background, gives us a little more contrast with the entire thing. Let's go ahead and apply that. Okay. Other than that, one more thing you could do is sharpen, or I'm sorry, not sharpen, saturate the stars a little bit, give them some color. Now this image, again, my backspacing was incorrect, so I have a lot of CA here. You can see it fringing right here. So if I'm going to apply saturation to this, it's going to amplify that fringing. So I would ideally want to take care of that. I usually use a different software to extract the stars, take them into a different software program, and defringe them if I have that problem. Hopefully your optics don't have this problem. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I would saturate these stars. Two ways you could, well, multiple ways. You could create a star mask with StarXterminator or StarNet, or you could just use Pixinsight's mask generation tool, star mask. This one works pretty good. Usually bump up this noise threshold to about 3.5 or 4, and scale up a little bit to get some of the larger stars in there. Let's see what this produces. Okay, yeah, it did a pretty good job. I don't have a lot of the galaxy in there or noise. So let's apply this as a star mask. I'm going to create a new preview window with some of the larger stars. Then I'm going to, let's see here, let's close this. A couple ways you can saturate stars. You can use the curves transformation tool, or you can use, again, the color saturation tool. I'm going to reset it. I'm just going to preview this and drag this line up. And you can see the further up I get, you see how the fringing is amplified. So for me, the trade-off is not worth the fringing. So I'm just going to leave them pretty much desaturated. But hopefully hopefully your optics were set up a little better than mine, and you can just saturate your stars a little bit. Usually I find just a small amount. If I have the range set to 3 here, you know, just bumping it up a little bit gives you a good star color. But again, for this image, I'm just going to leave it alone. It's totally fine. And I think that's about it. You know, to me, this is a pretty decent image for coming out of such a light polluted sky. I was thrilled at the time to have this, and then I switched to mono, which changed things. But for one-shot color, this is pretty good. I'm happy with it. So anyways, that's it. I hope you found something useful in this, and I hope you can incorporate this workflow into your own. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.